In the earliest part of the Bible, Genesis, we have Joseph going through some very unhappy experiences early in life, betrayed by his own brothers, separated from his father and his living relatives, sold into slavery in Egypt. Not a very pleasant story when you get into it. While Joseph is there, two of the king's servants, two of Pharaoh's servants, are cast into jail, into prison with him. And the miracles begin, the miracles meaning the visions or dreams that were given to Pharaoh's servants. And both of these Egyptians that are thrown into jail, into prison, are given dreams. What does my dream mean? And this was the first opportunity, as I recall, for Joseph to say, well, there's a God in heaven and he is showing you what's going to happen to you. And it was not a happy picture. So one of these is going to die and one of them is going to be restored to his rightful place. How or why God works the way he does, you can't sort it out. The Bible says you'll never sort out God's ways. As high as the heavens are above the earth, so my thoughts and my words are above you. So we try to understand. And that's what happened after the dreams were given to the servants of Pharaoh. Pharaoh was given dreams. So somehow there was this servant of Pharaoh who was sent back and restored, and he had forgotten about Joseph. Remember what Joseph said to him? When you get before the king, before Pharaoh, remember me. Well, he didn't remember. He forgot all about it. Pharaoh has a dream, and there seems to be some troubling part to it. And then he's given a second dream, and he wants answers. So this servant who was in prison and restored, he remembers this Hebrew, that he has some connection with, quotes, the gods, and you should call him. I believe he can interpret your dream or dreams. So Joseph says to the king, the thing that God has given you is doubled. Remember this? It's doubled. What does that mean? This record in the Bible is where we really begin this business of doubling. Pharaoh's given two dreams. They're doubled. What does that mean?
Sure.
Because the thing was doubled unto the king, therefore know and understand it is certain. Thank you, that's the word. It is certain because it's doubled. Now this principle plays out Old Testament and New Testament. And in 2 or 3 instances, it's doubled, but it's better if there are 3 witnesses, 2 or 3 witnesses. So what would you do if there are 4? What would you do if there were 2 and 2 and then 4? And the same idea, the same concept is presented over and over and over again. Well, let's get started on the board and we'll play this out. I hope you can see this. I didn't want to erase it. Chapter 2, chapter 4, chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter of what? Daniel. book of Daniel. 1, 2, 3, 4. These two, the record of 2 and 4, is one double. Double what? Double dreams given to Nebuchadnezzar. Chapter 2 and chapter 4 were given to Nebuchadnezzar, just like Pharaoh is going to get 2. Nebuchadnezzar has 2 visions. That's a double. In chapter 7 and chapter 8 of Daniel, we have another double. These are 2 visions or dreams given to Belshazzar. Who was Belshazzar? Come on. Belshazzar is the last king of Babylon. All right? Last king. 2 to Nebuchadnezzar, 2 to Belshazzar. What if we look and discover that all 4 of these dreams, even though given to different parties, are about the same subject? Same dream, just a little change in actors or events, but the same dream. So what I'm going to ask you to do is try and picture, just very quickly, how these are being played out. In chapter 2 of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar is told plainly by Daniel, who is interpreting now for the king, you are this head of, and God has shown the king what shall be in 333 BC. What's the context of the dreams given to Nebuchadnezzar? About the time of the end. In all 4 of these instances, it's clear that whatever these dreams mean, they're about the time of the end. If you have 4 dreams given to these parties, if you have 4 dreams and these dreams are the same, they're different, the pieces in the picture are different. This is the metal image, head of gold. You are the head of gold. In chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar himself is the person who is writing chapter 4. Daniel didn't write this. Nebuchadnezzar wrote it. And he tells a story, and he is troubled, just like Pharaoh. He's troubled in that he doesn't understand what it means. And of course, in chapter 4, you have a great tree. You're this head of gold. You are this great tree, O king. So let's come down to 7 and 8. And 7 is the first mention of the beasts and animals, prophetic animals, and the beast system. So in chapter 7, we have the lion, the bear, the leopard, and the terrible beast. In chapter 8, we have the rough goat, the he-goat, coming from the west across the face of the whole earth. He has a notable horn, or a prominent horn of sight. It says that's between his eyes. And he comes across the face of the whole earth. And in each of these dreams, the same thing happens. The same consequence or result happens. The head of gold is diminished and weakened to silver. The great tree is cut down. The lion has his wings and his heart pulled out. And the he-goat with the notable horn, the horn is broken. And his power is lessened. Now, if all of these 4, and they are contextually at the time of the end, if they refer to some power that is a great earthly power, what options do we have? If it had anything to do with today, What options do we have? Who is the great power, the great tree, the head of gold? Let's take a little detour for a few minutes. In 1961, I was in my first year at Southern Missionary College. And because I had signed up for the ministerial course, there are certain things that you can choose that are optional, and then there are certain things that they choose for you. One of the things that they choose for ministerial students is each year you're going to be assigned to a different church, and you're going to be there for Sabbath school once a month, and you're going to be there for and there. And so my assignment, Judy, what did they call that Sabbath assignment?
Seminar.
Seminar. Yeah, seminar band. And I was assigned to Graysville, Tennessee. Graysville, Tennessee. You weren't there, but I was. That's about 50, maybe 60 miles north of Chattanooga and Collegedale and whatever. And it was a very interesting experience. I did not know the history. I had to learn piecemeal when I was introduced there. And I found out that Graysville, Tennessee was the original location of what would become Southern Missionary College. It would be moved from Graysville, Tennessee to Collegedale, Tennessee. Actually, Collegedale got its name because they moved the college there. I didn't know the history, so when I got there, here are buildings very much decrepit and falling down, rotting down. It was not a pretty sight at all. And the saints, maybe 15 saints living there, were still keeping church and Sabbath school in the basement of one of the buildings that had fallen rotted down on top. It was not a pretty sight. It was not an inviting sight or experience. Nevertheless, it turns out that things happened there that I needed to know later in my life. On this one day, we had a break between Sabbath school and the 11 o'clock worship hour. And it was an opportunity to kind of get out of this cold, damp, dark basement and go out and stand in the sunshine like today, just like this time of the year. And so two of the church members went out and they were kind of chatting to one another. And I showed up and joined in their fellowship, and here came a lady out of the group, and the conversation picked up and started talking about, when Sister White was here, she came to visit here at this very location. And these were old timers that I was talking to, so they're going back in a collective memory and trying to tell me the story of Sister White. She was standing about where you are, Brother Wheelan. And the subject came up about the end of time and God's people having to flee for their lives. And so one of these folks spoke up and said yes, and lifted his hand to point up to the mountains that were rising up. Sister White says, this is one of the places I was shown that God's people will have to go. Some of God's people will come into these areas here that we're looking at, and they will be safe. This has to be in the last 3.5 to 7 years of time. I'm trying to pin it down. Where does this belong? Why am I getting this information? I didn't appreciate it in my first year of college. I didn't know enough to appreciate what was going on. But these are old timers. They were Ivan's age, 90, 80, 90. They're pointing, and yeah, Sister White pointed up there and said, I saw God's people in some of these places. So I have a question for you. What state were they in? Were we in? The great state of Tennessee. What's unique about Tennessee? I shouldn't say unique. What's special about Tennessee? How about south? How about Mason-Dixon line, south? If you're going to survive, you're going to have to survive. You don't want 4 feet of snow on the ground, right? You don't want intensely cold temperatures. You want, how about water? 2/3 or more of the country is desert. We need water. We need garden soil. We need. Let me get a little diagram over here. All right, do you recognize where we are? California, Florida, Texas. If you're going to have to survive in inclement weather, would you want to be north of this line or south of this line? South, absolutely. Is there going to be some difficulties with religion when this time comes? Will the difficulties have anything to do with Protestants versus Catholics and whoever? Will there be differences of opinion? And knowing that you and I are Protestants, would we want to be south of the line? Because this is Protestant America. Right here. Texas to the west, all the way across the southern states. If you knew there was going to be troublous times and that has to do with religion, would you want to be Protestant or what? Would you prefer to be in Protestant territory, Catholic territory, California territory? So why do we worry about saving our skin? Why? Why should we bring this subject up? Why not talk about Jesus? That's what we're talking about. What is going to be happening in the final years on this planet? What's going to be happening up there? Come on. What's the last thing to be done? Judgment in heaven. And are there going to be some people who are going to be alive down here? Yes. Some people. How many? I don't know, but at least 144,000, and I'm sure more because there's a great multitude besides. So let's do this. There's a double, and there's a double. That's double. Why does God spend so much of the book of Daniel, which is about the end of time, time of the end? Why does God spend so much time on the United States and what's going to happen to the United States at the time of the end? So I'm ready for some ideas from you. Why would God spend so much time talking about this powerful nation at the time of the end and something humbling this nation, humbling this nation. Why would that be so important to you and me or anybody? Well, let me ask you this. When the Advent movement was taking place back in the 1800s, where was it founded or placed when the time came for the Advent movement to get underway? Was it in Mexico? Was it in Canada? Was it in... Let's try the United States, okay? When the time came for this Advent movement to get itself together, they needed money to found the denomination, the schools, the clinics, the hospitals, the whatever. What nation would they want to be in for wealth to get the movement underway? There are not many choices in what we're talking about here. You understand? The United States was chosen. Now I'm trying to put a picture together in my thinking and understand that you're this head of gold at the time of the end, and something is going to happen, and you're going to be diminished in strength and power and energy and wealth and whatever. And then it's told again, you're this great tree. So who do you think the great tree represents, and who do you think the head of gold represents? Do we know anyone who has golden hair? He's been traveling so much in the last 2 weeks, he hasn't had his hair cut and taken care of. And so if you saw him on camera and really watched and looked, he had golden hair from here over, and he had gray hair from here over. And I noticed on the news that he had gotten it taken care of, and he was golden haired all over. You think there's anything at all to this, you are this head of gold? I do. You're this great tree. This great tree had great wealth. And there has never been a president who has brought wealth and prosperity to this nation, like this president. How long do you think this wealth and prosperity is going to last? So we don't know how long the head of gold will last until it turns silver. There's a diminishing in wealth and strength and power. But when we get to chapter 4 in the great tree, now we have numbers, now we have times. And so this is what it says. You saw, O king, a great tree. It stretched its branches over the whole earth. It prospered in everything that it did. It fed the birds, it fed the beasts, it fed the people. It prospered. Something happened that erased the prosperity. Came at Jesus' birth. The 3 wise men. We say there were 3. What made them wise men? They were watchers and holy ones. They were looking into the prophecies, and they said, we've seen his star. They were watchers and holy ones. That's the same thing here. Exactly. The great tree gets cut down. Not entirely, not put to death, not destroyed, but it's cut down. And the word is that put a band of iron and brass around the stump cut it down, but put this band of iron and brass around. Iron and brass, iron and brass. And don't let the stump die. But there's judgment that's going to be passed on the power. So you are going to have power and prosperity and wealth, and at a certain time, 12 months after something takes place prophetically, 12 months later, you're going to be cut down. You're going to lose your mind. You're going to go crazy. You're going to eat grass in the field like the donkeys. That's not literally eating grass, but you're going to be like all the other beasts out there who don't have great wealth and power and so forth. And then 7 years will pass over you. And at the end of those 7 years, you're going to come to your senses. And you will lift your eyes to heaven and you will praise God because your mind is restored and the Most High rules in the heavens. So I want you to look at chapter 4 and verse 17. Daniel 4 and verse 17. To the intent that the living might know, that's the ones living at the time this is taking place, to the intent that the living might know and understand that the Most High rules in the heavens and in the kingdoms of men. And he sets over it whomsoever he will or chooses. And he chooses the basest of men. And we're talking about the president. We're talking about someone who is under great stress and loses their mind. We call that a nervous breakdown when I was a kid. We had 3 people in my family that had nervous breakdowns in generation. So there was something genetic about it. You're going to lose your mind. You're not going to be lost, but you're going to lose your mind, and you will be restored at the end of 7 years. So there's an event that takes place, and then there are 12 months. And when that 12 months come, your mind is broken, your wealth is broken, your power is broken, your kingdom is broken. That's the United States of America, if this has anything at all to do with you and me and us. 7 years to follow. 3.5 would be the final part of the 7 years. So my question to you is, we're in the book business. We're trying to print millions of books and we're trying to get them into the hands of as many people as possible. If this begins working prophetically, if we see this taking place, what do we know? I believe when this time comes, that's when the mark and all the real trials begin. If you don't have a number you can't buy, you can't sell, you can't. The mark of the beast is somewhere in here. When we look at this, if we want to print books, if God sends the money, opens the door, we print the books, how quickly would we want to be on with the work? What would push us to push and get this done as quickly as possible? Why would we be pushed? Because of time, the limitations. Whatever is broken right here, with the tree cut down, with the wings plucked, with the notable horn broken, whatever all of this means. We've got about 3.5 years of the 7 to get the bookwork done, as far as we can go, as fast as we can go. Does that make any sense to you? What would you do knowing that this is going to come to a screeching halt? This is going to come to a breakdown of the government, the economy, and whatever. Well, you'd have to look at these visions. But the notable horn is broken. And if this horn is representing the United States, and I believe it is, then our economy will be broken, and where would we want to be if we were going to be somewhere knowing that it's downhill till Jesus comes? Where would you want to be? South, Protestant. You listening? South meaning there's water and there's a temperate climate. You can find a place to grow some whatever. 3.5 years. Is this an ideal place to be? We're talking about this little enclave here in this community. Is this an ideal place to be? Is it rich ground, rich soil? No. We don't know where the Lord will put us, but should we be asking? I'm going to quote Ellen White right here. God has places prepared for his people. If they would only ask, he will show them. Now, I happen to believe this is true. I happen to believe that she was given light and information. God will show them if they just earnestly inquire. They have to put everything on the line. In other words, if you have wealth, there's a certain amount of time you can spend it, a certain amount of time you can do good with it, you can do whatever you're going to do, but when the time comes for the break, then if you have wealth and you didn't ask God to show you what to do with it, then it will be a burden on you for the rest of your life till Jesus comes. That's what she says. I saw that if they did not inquire of the Lord, they would be allowed to keep whatever it is, lands, money, all whatever. And it will come up like a mountain to crush them when the time comes. They will see that they wasted it by not using it in God's cause. So let's talk about you and me and us and why we're here. I look at these books out here, and I can remember when there was no concrete block here. Clarence Ward had a little cabinet shop down the road here. Clarence Ward was once upon a time a Seventh-day Adventist, but he decided that he couldn't live the Adventist life. But I would stop by from time to time. Clarence, how you doing? Okay. Sure would like to see you in Sabbath school and church. No. God had already given me a dream. I want you to start a publishing ministry. And so we're trying to make plans to, what do you do? We don't have a building. We don't have money. We don't have. And I'm stopping by Clarence's cabinet shop on my way to town, Clanton. And his cabinet shop is burned, had a fire. And he was standing dejectedly outside when I drove up. I said, Clarence, what in the world happened? Well, had a fire and all these paints and thinners and things in here. It just went in a hurry. And I said, what are you going to do? I don't know, but my wife tells me if I don't get rid of this building, the idea is I'm going to divorce you. I can't have this in my front yard. So Clarence looked at me and he said, wouldn't you like to have a building? Oh, yeah, I would. But I don't have any money, Clarence. You don't even know what I'm going to ask for. Well, what are you going to ask? $1,000. Would you give me $1,000 for this building? Get it down, get it out of here? I said, I don't have the $1,000, but I'm going to find it. So I came back a couple of days. I said, I've got some friends, and they said they'll pay the $1,000. He said, fine, get this out of here. It's gone. My wife wants it gone. You hear what I'm saying? Gone. He said, and you don't even have a truck, do you? I said, no. Well, that's what I thought. I've got a truck. You can borrow it. So what would you do to tear down this block building? What would you do? You'd call for some volunteers, which I did. We had about 6 or 7 of us. And on this certain day, we assembled there, and we're going to come with chisels and hammers, and we're going to take block down, and we're going to chisel the cement off of the block, and we're going to clean it up, and we're going to remove this building. And we got there, and you reach for the top course of block, and it just popped right off. You didn't have to lift a hammer. You didn't have to have a chisel. It just popped right off. Not only that, the cement, the mortar on the block just fell away. So we had clean block. You listening? How does this happen? So we had a building, and this is where it wound up, right here in the blackberry patch, right out there. And I had to unload these blocks. They're all stacked up on the hill here. And well, there's not a piece of ground here wide enough, long enough to put the building on, 60 feet, whatever. I don't remember the dimensions. Lord, what are we going to do? So my insurance agent from Clanton showed up. He said, what's going on? I said, we got a building donated. We want to start the ministry. Yeah? I said, yeah, I got to get a bulldozer. Got to get somebody in here to... He said, I've got a machine. I'll loan it to you. I'll bring it to you, and I'll loan it to you. No money. Are you listening? So let's move all of that down here. We know that whatever this great power is, this great wealth is, there's something going to happen, and it's going to be broken, it's going to be removed, it's going to be diminished, it's going to be. So we need to act as quickly as we can, as wisely as we can, here, because this is certainly going to happen. It's doubled, it's doubled, it's doubled again. It's going to happen. We're not wealthy people. At least not yet. We're not wealthy people. If God was sending money, what would you want to do? I'm not saying what would you want to do with the money. I'm saying how would you respond if God sent wealth your way? What would you do? Would you ask God for directions about how to spend it? Where to put it? Where not to put it? Would there be a blessing in that? And if you didn't ask God what to do with His wealth, would there be a curse in it? Yes. Yes. This is going to be a very sensitive time that we're coming to. Money drives some people crazy. No, money drives everybody crazy. And yet that's what happened at the beginning when there was no building here. There were no blocks. There was no whatever. Now, I'm not insinuating that God burnt the cabinet shop down, but he certainly took advantage of it. We took advantage of it. And things came together step by step by step. You listening? That's going to happen again. And I want to get past just this ministry and what's coming to you and me and our families, because what's coming is going to come on all of us. And we're going to have to make choices and decisions, and they're going to have to be firm. They're going to have to be open-hearted, open, clean, clear with God. I'm asking you what to do. I'm asking you to show me what to do. Tell me what to do. That's how this ministry was born. I don't want to do that. Yes, but I want you to do it. Once I made up my mind that I would say yes and not no, then things fall into place. Are you listening? Now we're talking about you. We're talking about a little group of people in this community here, and they're going to be given an opportunity to have part in this ministry. Well, what are we going to do? We have friends who helped us distribute millions of books already, literally millions of books. We're going to be calling on them. As a matter of fact, they're already calling on us, calling on me, saying, what's your plan? Well, I'm waiting for God to tell us what the plan is. Well, things are happening very quickly. Yes, they are. The picture is becoming more and more plain that there's a period of prosperity just ahead of us. It will be at least 12 months in duration. Are you listening? In that 12 months, if you see this happening, if we see this great wealth and the nation prospering and the president and his plans, what would you do with 12 months? You need to pray about it. You need to think about it. You need to plan for it. So there is some event that is going to take place. This will be a trigger event. I believe in reading Daniel and reading Daniel repeatedly, I believe it has to do with a showdown between the United States and Great Britain and Iran and Iraq. That's what I believe. I believe it's clear enough in the prophetic picture. So we've seen this showdown coming now for almost 20 years in Iraq, but things are happening this week. And so I'll ask you, have you followed in the news this week? Are we talking about Iran? Do you know what's going on in Iran right now? Civil disobedience, breakdown in law and order, because we have pushed all these sanctions on them and cut off we won't even let them sell their oil. They have millions of barrels of oil, and we're not allowing them to sell it. Why? Because we don't want them to get the money and pay for terrorist activities. So we're going to have some showdown that may already be underway, may already be in the works. So if things really turn hot between the United States and Iran and so forth, if things really heat up very quickly, what will that signal to you and me? I'll tell you what it says to me. You've got a brief period of time in which there's going to be a trigger event, war with Iran, but it says plainly in the book of Daniel, there's the power from the west just stomps on him and breaks him down, and he has no power to resist. And then follows 12 months. What would you do with that 12 months, you and your family? If you really begin to get the picture here that something is going on, you've got 12 months, what would you do in the 12 months? I'll tell you what Ellen White said. Get out of debt as quickly as possible. So the first thing that you're going to do when the trigger event has reared its ugly head, the first thing you're going to do is pay all your debts. Isn't that a nice thought? How are you going to do that? How are you going to do that? Well, the Lord would have to make a way. Do you believe God can make a way? Do you believe He can put concrete blocks up, freeze the mortar the night it's built, and when the time comes, the walls come tumbling down? Didn't have to chip the mortar off of a block. Never heard of such. What would the 12 months be as far as you and your family are concerned? I'm not asking you to say this is exactly what I'm saying. Would that be a special time now in this conversation? Would that be a special time to be in prayer and be asking God to help you get out of debt? You listening? Ellen White, in talking about when this time comes, get out of debt as quickly as possible. Oh, no man, anything. Oh, that would take a miracle. Exactly. Exactly. I'm praying that we will be able to get the books going. That's money. That's God's business. The money is God's business. If He sends the wealth, then we want to print the books. But beyond the books, what else do we want to do? Would we be looking for a place, not necessarily you, but you, would we be looking for a place that we could have a garden to sustain ourselves? I saw that those who had a little place to go and take their families and grow something to eat would live like kings and, I'm quoting, live like kings and queens. Every time I think back over these statements, I picture myself back in Tennessee and those old timers standing there and pointing up. This one brother, he pointed up there. Yeah, Sister White was standing just about where you are, Brother Wheeling. And she said, I saw these mountains in my dream, and I saw God's people would be hiding in some of these places. Not hiding like I'm hiding so you can't see me, but hiding in that you don't want the place where the buildings, the houses are crowded closely together. You want a place where you can grow something to eat. That's something that I observed when we moved to Chilton County was these old timers here, and that's basically all that was left in the county at the time we moved here were old timers. But nearly every house down the road had a garden. Some of you have been here long enough to remember that. People had gardens. Between here and Jemison, all that's covered up with big houses now. Ate up that good ground with a fancy house or two. You need a place to grow something to eat. Well, you have to have seed. You have to have. So this is what I'm asking this morning. Listen, I'm asking you to set your brain in motion and think about what would we do if. What would we do if? And all of that begins with ask God. Ask God. Inquire of God for duty. Inquire of God. Ask God. And he will show you what to do. That's the statement. That's the promise in the Bible and in the spirit of prophecy. Ask and God will show you. But you have to ask. You have to be willing. Now, I can't say too much, don't want to say too much, but I have seen God do things, even this week. People that we haven't heard from for quite some time, they sent a gift. All I want to say is it was needed and it arrived. Didn't know it was coming, but God knew we needed it and sent it. You're listening? Before they ask, I will answer. Before they ask, I will answer. That's what I want. That's what I wish for every family in this little neighborhood, this little gathering. That you will get answers clear enough, bold enough, that you will understand God is doing this. God is answering this prayer. God is showing us what to do. When the time comes for the outpouring of the latter rain, the miracles are going to multiply very quickly all over the world. Every dark corner, we're told. Miracles. God is going to make a demonstration. In Ellen White's words, he will bear his mighty arm. He will take control, and the work will go. The message will go. It has to go. So what is the purpose of this ministry? To print books? We have people call here from time to time. They got one of the books in the mail. Who are you people? Well, we're just a group of Christians, and we believe God has given us a work to do, to tell people, get ready for Jesus' return. One lady called from Virginia or somewhere over along the coast over there, North Carolina or Virginia. Someone sent this to me in the mail, and I want to know how you got my name. Well, we just buy a mailing list, and evidently you were on the list. Well, this is, my husband and I have read this book now 2-3 times. This is powerful. We've never seen anything like this before. You listening? I think of the people that I met out in the work, people that I met. I was in Mobile, and I was in a church, big Baptist church, calling on the pastor to try and put Bible story books in the Bible reference library and the church library. It was hot summertime. I drove up, I parked. It was a weekday, so plenty of parking around the church. I parked. I got my coat and tie, and I've got my case. There's an old black gentleman out mowing the grass at the church. So when I walked by, I said, he kind of nodded, went in, had my discussion with the pastor and some folk in the church. And I'm coming back out, and he's standing there with his mower. He's turned the mower off, and he's just standing there wiping his brow. Howdy, Reverend. That's what he said to me. Howdy, Reverend. And I looked at him, I said, how'd you know I was a preacher? He said, the Spirit told me. So does God make appointments? Here's a whole string of appointments. Have they arrived yet? Has the time arrived yet? No, but is it near? Absolutely. The picture is perfect out there. We're knocking on the doors of the end. Now, this is what I want to ask of you. God paid all of your bills, what would you do with your time? I've been talking to Tony. Tony has done a fantastic job of making the connections with printers, big printing establishments. All kinds of things have been done. But until God opens the doors, turns the lights on, it's just talk. Tony, if God sends the money and we start printing books, what are we going to do? How are we going to manage this? So we have a David Kane who has years of experience in giving out the books. We have Emil Spalita, years of experience with David in giving out the books. We have several people that we can press into service. I'm looking for people here to press into service because there are certain things we want to do. One of the things that we want to do is get books into Atlanta as quickly as possible. Why? Because it is a bomb waiting to explode. Are you following what's going on, folks? Policemen, firemen, people are, and it's increasing. So the interview last night with firemen and policemen on the news, we can't even put out the fire. We get there, we're ready, but they start throwing bricks at us and bottles at us, and this is a breakdown in law and order. These are the kinds of places, these cities need to be filled with books as quickly as possible. Some we're going to mail, some we're going to mail and giveaways, whatever. If God makes a way, I want you to pray, just pray that God will show you if you have any part in what's coming. Pray and ask God to show you. Pray and ask God to pay your debts. Pray. Pray with understanding. This is time to pray and ask God to pour out His Holy Spirit on the church. We're not talking about a legal organization as much as we're talking about the people who have some understanding of the Advent message and some understanding of the responsibility God has put upon the Advent Christians to say to the world, it's time for Jesus to come. That's who we are. That's what we are. Just one more thing. 2 and 2. If you'll do your homework, go through, you'll find that the 2 and the 2 are doubled. You go further, you'll find that the 4 and the 4 are doubled. You listening? This cannot be happenstance. It cannot be. It's certain. Know therefore, because the thing was doubled unto the king, it is certain. Father in heaven, we believe the time has come for great changes, for great answers to prayer, to do a great work. We've been here for years, waiting now, waiting. It's time for you to work, O Lord. It's time for you to work. It's time for your blessing. And so I'm asking you to bless these families that are represented here, these people who are represented here. Bless them. Give them a vision, some understanding of who we are in this little group, little community, that God has a large work for us to do. We don't know who, how, when, but we know you can open the windows of heaven and pour out these blessings, and that's what we're asking for. That's what I'm asking for. In Jesus' name, amen.